The morning at the small-town police station was calm, routine. Officer Ryan sat at his desk, flipping through paperwork as the quiet hum of conversation filled the air. Then, the station door swung open with a loud creak. At first, no one thought much of it. People walked in all the time with lost items or minor complaints. But this time was different. A golden retriever, drenched in mud and visibly exhausted, rushed inside, panting heavily. Her ribs showed beneath her dirty fur, and her wide, frantic eyes darted around the room. But the most alarming part? She was carrying a tiny, squirming puppy in her mouth. Ryan looked up, startled. What the? Before anyone could react, the dog bolted toward the center of the room and carefully placed the puppy on the floor. Then, without hesitation, she spun around and dashed back out the door. The room fell into silence. The puppy let out a weak, pitiful whimper. The officers exchanged confused glances. "What's going on?" one of them murmured. Ryan stood up, his curiosity piqued. He knelt beside the trembling puppy, barely larger than his hand. Its eyes were barely open, and its tiny body shook with exhaustion. Then, suddenly, the mother dog burst back through the door, this time carrying another puppy. She placed it gently beside the first, then ran out again. Now, the atmosphere in the station changed. Every officer stopped what they were doing, eyes locked on the doorway. By the time she returned with a third puppy, it was clear, this was no coincidence. The retriever's frantic movements, the puppy's fragile state, something was terribly wrong. Ryan's stomach twisted as he noticed just how thin she was. Her steps were slower now, her legs wobbling as she tried to keep going. She was running on pure determination. Ryan scooped up the first two puppies, cradling them in his arms. "Someone get a blanket," he called, his voice steady but urgent. "And some water, she's been through something bad." Officer Linda rushed over, laying out a soft blanket. Ryan carefully placed the puppies on it as the dog returned one final time, her breathing ragged. She carried the fourth and last puppy. With her final ounce of strength, she laid it beside its siblings, then collapsed on the floor beside them. A stunned silence filled the station. The officers gathered around, their faces reflecting the same mix of shock, concern, and awe. "Where did she come from?" Linda asked softly. Ryan knelt beside the exhausted mother, gently stroking her head. "I don't know," he murmured, his throat tight. "But she brought them here for a reason." The golden retriever lifted her head slightly, her tired eyes locking onto his. There was something in them, an unspoken plea, maybe gratitude, maybe desperation. The once busy station was now completely still. Everyone seemed to understand the weight of what had just happened. This mother dog had risked everything to bring her babies to safety. She had chosen this place. But why? And what was she running from? Ryan exchanged a look with his colleagues. "We need to figure this out," he said firmly. "But first, let's make sure they're okay." As he gently checked the puppies for injuries, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much bigger story. And something told him it was far from over. The morning at the small-town police station was just like any other, quiet, routine, and uneventful. Officer Ryan sat at his desk, flipping through a stack of paperwork, while the occasional murmur of conversation echoed from his colleagues. The smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air, blending with the faint hum of the radio. It was peaceful, almost boring. But that was about to change. Without warning, the heavy wooden door of the station swung open with a loud creak. A gust of air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain-soaked earth and something else, something raw, urgent. At first, no one paid much attention. People came and went all the time, reporting lost wallets, asking for directions, or filing minor complaints. But this time was different. A dog, mud-covered, drenched, and panting heavily, staggered into the room. It wasn't just any stray, it was a golden retriever, its fur matted with dirt and debris. Its wide, desperate eyes scanned the room, silently pleading for help. Clamped in its jaws was a tiny, squirming puppy. Ryan looked up from his desk, frowning. "What the?" he muttered, barely processing what he was seeing. Before anyone could react, the retriever bolted forward, its paws skidding slightly against the smooth floor. It reached the center of the room, then, with surprising gentleness, lowered the puppy onto the ground. The tiny creature let out a weak, high-pitched whimper. Then, as suddenly as it had arrived, the mother dog turned and sprinted back out the door. The station fell into stunned silence. Officers exchanged puzzled glances. "What's going on?" someone murmured. Ryan stood, his curiosity quickly turning into concern. He knelt beside the trembling puppy, cradling its frail body in his large hands. The little thing barely weighed anything. Its fur was damp, its belly thin. It blinked at him sleepily, too exhausted to do much else. "Hey, little guy," Ryan whispered, stroking the pup's tiny head. "Where's your mom?" As if in response, the golden retriever burst back through the door, this time with a second puppy dangling from her jaws. She laid it down beside the first and dashed outside again without hesitation. A cold realization settled over the room. "Something's not right," Ryan said, standing. His heartbeat picked up. The officers watched, frozen in place, as the dog returned yet again, carrying a third tiny pup. By now, it was clear, this wasn't just a coincidence. The retriever was exhausted. Her ribs were faintly visible beneath her muddied coat. Her movements were growing slower, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. Yet, she pushed forward, driven by something stronger than exhaustion, something primal, a mother's desperation. Ryan carefully scooped up the first two puppies, holding them close to his chest. Their tiny bodies pressed against his uniform, their warmth a stark contrast to the cold air outside. "Someone get a blanket," he called out, his voice steady but urgent. "And water, this dog's been through hell." Officer Linda hurried over, unfolding a soft fleece blanket and spreading it on the floor. Ryan gently placed the puppies onto it, his eyes never leaving the door. And then, one final time, the golden retriever reappeared. She was moving slower now, her paws dragging slightly. In her mouth was the fourth and final puppy. She placed it down carefully, her legs trembling beneath her. Then, as if her body had finally given up, she collapsed beside her babies, too weak to move another inch. Silence fell over the station. Officers gathered around, their expressions shifting from confusion to awe, then to concern. "Where did she come from?" Linda whispered, kneeling beside the retriever. Ryan slowly reached out, brushing his fingers gently over the mother dog's head. Her fur was rough, tangled with twigs and mud, but beneath all of that, she was beautiful, strong. "I don't know," he admitted, his throat tightening. "But whatever she's been through, she brought them here for a reason." The retriever opened her eyes just enough to look at him. In that moment, Ryan saw something in them, something deeper than exhaustion. A mix of gratitude, fear, and relief all at once. A mother who had risked everything to save her babies, bringing them to the only place she believed they would be safe. The weight of the moment settled over the room. "She must have come from somewhere close," an officer said. "Maybe there's more out there." Ryan glanced at his colleagues, nodding firmly. "We need to find out where she came from," he said. "But first, let's make sure they're okay." Yet, she pushed forward, driven by something stronger than exhaustion, something primal, a mother's desperation. Ryan carefully scooped up the first two puppies, holding them close to his chest. Their tiny bodies pressed against his uniform, their warmth a stark contrast to the cold air outside. "Someone get a blanket," he called out, his voice steady but urgent. "And water, this dog's been through hell." Officer Linda hurried over, unfolding a soft fleece blanket and spreading it on the floor. Ryan gently placed the puppies onto it, his eyes never leaving the door. And then, one final time, the golden retriever reappeared. She was moving slower now, her paws dragging slightly. In her mouth was the fourth and final puppy. She placed it down carefully, her legs trembling beneath her. Then, as if her body had finally given up, she collapsed beside her babies, too weak to move another inch. Silence fell over the station. Officers gathered around, their expressions shifting from confusion to awe, then to concern. "Where did she come from?" Linda whispered, kneeling beside the retriever. Ryan slowly reached out, brushing his fingers gently over the mother dog's head. Her fur was rough, tangled with twigs and mud, but beneath all of that, she was beautiful, strong. "I don't know," he admitted, his throat tightening. "But whatever she's been through, she brought them here for a reason." The retriever opened her eyes just enough to look at him. In that moment, Ryan saw something in them, something deeper than exhaustion. A mix of gratitude, fear, and relief all at once. A mother who had risked everything to save her babies, bringing them to the only place she believed they would be safe. The weight of the moment settled over the room. "She must have come from somewhere close," an officer said. "Maybe there's more out there." Ryan glanced at his colleagues, nodding firmly. "We need to find out where she came from," he said. "But first, let's make sure they're okay." As he carefully checked the puppies for injuries, his mind raced with questions. Where had this dog come from? What had she escaped from? And why had she chosen this place? of all places, to bring her precious litter? Whatever the answers were, one thing was certain. This was only the beginning of a much bigger story. The rain drummed heavily against the SUV's windshield as Linda tightened her grip on the steering wheel. The rescue mission had taken a turn for the worse, and she could still feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Patel sat in the passenger seat, her fingers trembling as she checked on the golden retriever lying across the back seat. The mother dog's breath was shallow, her ribs showing through her dirty fur, but she was still alive. Her puppies, nestled in a crate beside her, whimpered softly. Meanwhile, Ryan sat at his desk back at the station, his fingers drumming anxiously against the table. The evidence he had collected from the black truck, the blood-stained ropes, the scratches, the ominous stench of filth, told a far more disturbing story than he was prepared to accept. These men weren't just neglectful pet owners. They were hiding something vile, something that made his stomach twist with unease. His thoughts were shattered when Carl burst through the door, his face ghostly pale. "Ryan," he gasped, struggling to catch his breath. "The truck, it's gone." Ryan's head snapped up. "What?" Carl nodded, his hands shaking. "They must have doubled back. I checked the security cameras. They left just a few minutes after Linda did, and they're heading in the same direction." A pit formed in Ryan's stomach. He grabbed his radio, his voice sharp with urgency. "Linda, it's Ryan. Do you copy?" There was a pause before Linda's voice crackled through the static. "I hear you. They're coming for you," Ryan said grimly. "You need to get out of there, now." Inside the clinic, Linda's heart pounded against her ribcage. The air suddenly felt too thick, too heavy. She turned to Dr. Patel, who was still examining the weak retriever. "We need to move her, now." Dr. Patel didn't hesitate. She grabbed the crate of puppies while Linda helped the retriever to her feet. The dog's legs wobbled, her body trembling from exhaustion, but she refused to let her pups be taken from her again. Then, in the distance, Linda heard it, the deep, guttural rumble of an engine approaching fast. Her blood ran cold as she turned toward the window. Headlights cut through the darkness, and a black truck roared up the road, kicking up dirt in its wake. "They're here," Linda whispered. Her breath caught in her throat. Patel's hands shook as she secured the crate in the back of her car. Linda threw open the driver's side door and jumped in just as the truck screeched into the parking lot. The driver's door swung open, and the same man from earlier stepped out, his face twisted with anger and something far worse, possessiveness. "You can't take what's mine," he growled, his voice thick with menace. Linda didn't wait. She slammed her foot on the gas, the tires screeching as the car shot forward. The truck's engine roared to life behind them. They were being hunted. Linda's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. The truck was closing in fast. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she swerved onto the main road, the headlights growing larger in the mirror. Patel clutched the crate tightly, shielding the puppies as best she could. The golden retriever let out a low, protective growl, her maternal instincts flaring despite her weakened state. Then the truck rammed into them. The impact sent Linda's car skidding. She fought to regain control, her knuckles white as she gripped the wheel. The truck pulled up beside them, the driver leaning out of the window, his face a mask of fury. "Pull over," he barked. "Like hell," Linda muttered under her breath. She veered left, onto a dirt path leading toward an open field. For a moment, she thought they might lose them, but the truck followed, its tires skidding on the loose gravel. "They're not giving up," Dr. Patel whispered, fear tightening her voice. Linda glanced in the mirror again. "No, but they're not getting what they came for." The retriever moved protectively over the crate, her eyes never leaving the pursuing truck. She knew. Somehow, she understood the danger just as well as they did. Then the truck rammed them again. The car swerved violently. Linda bit back a scream, her heart hammering as she fought to keep them on the road. The truck was relentless, inching closer, its headlights burning into the darkness like the eyes of a predator. Then, flashing red and blue lights cut through the night. "Ryan." The truck's driver slammed on the brakes. 2 patrol cars blocked the road ahead, and officers jumped out, weapons drawn. "Out of the truck." Ryan's voice boomed across the field. The driver hesitated, his hands gripping the steering wheel, but he knew there was no escape. He stepped out, hands raised, his accomplice following suit with a stream of curses. Linda's breath hitched as she slumped back against the seat. They were safe. They had made it. Ryan approached her window, his gaze sweeping over her, then the golden retriever. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now. Linda nodded, but her hands were still shaking. "We are now." Ryan crouched beside the retriever, his voice gentle. "You did good, girl." The dog let out a soft whimper, her head resting against the crate. Exhaustion finally claimed her. Patel wiped at the tears pooling in her eyes. She risked everything to save them. Ryan turned toward the patrol car where the two men were being loaded in. His expression darkened. They were running an illegal dogfighting ring. She must have escaped when they tried to force her back. Linda's stomach twisted. "And she trusted us to help her." Ryan nodded. "Because she had no choice." Days later, the town knew her story. The golden retriever, now named Hope, became a symbol of resilience. She and her puppies found loving homes. And Hope, she found a family with Ryan. The illegal dogfighting ring was dismantled, and the men responsible faced justice. The town, once indifferent, came together, raising awareness about animal cruelty. At the station, Hope became something more than a rescued animal. She became a guardian, a survivor, a beacon of hope. And every time someone walked through the station doors, they were greeted by a golden retriever with eyes full of quiet strength, a silent reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way forward. There is always hope.